Okay, with winning filmmaker Russell Emanuel, you can see his trophies. How many trophies do you have behind you?
Uh,
Lots.
yeah, quite a lot. I think I think I'm waiting for the trophy from your festival. Thank you for awarding us.
Oh, no problem. So
Yeah.
so Staycation, award-winning feature film. You just said you got a distribution for it. Congratulations.
Yes, we got distribution about a month ago, and it should be a summer of 2025 release. It's going to be under the name Apocalypse Death Party.
Oh, so you
So
changed the name.
the distributor
And what do you
changed.
feel about that?
I'm fine. What you see for me, I'm not only the director, but I'm the head producer,
Yeah.
and I'm also answerable to my investors. So, when I was talking to our would-be distributor, before I signed with them, um, I told them I just want to maximize, whatever publicity we can for this film so that we can make as much money as possible for my investors. So if that means a title change, then so be it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So give people a pitch. What's the feature film about?
So it's a comedy horror film about a pandemic, which I guess we all lived through.
Yeah.
In this case, it's called the Nix virus, and it turns people into these walking automatons. And it's the horror genre, so I won't give it away. But basically, the symptoms are like COVID in a sense,
Yeah.
but with a horrific twist. And I directed the film in the vein of RoboCop, Paul Verhoeven's RoboCop.
Yeah.
So it has a very depressing A story, which we do in this film, and it's interspersed with these satirical commercials or news programs. I would give an example of one of the commercials is the clown vitamins. So basically, one thing that I think people did, including myself, is we started taking vitamins like vitamin C to combat COVID,
Yeah.
and could it protect you? And I even take it to this very day. So we kind of did kind of this film is kind of like a satire of living through a pandemic, a global pandemic. So, we have these kind of commercials. And the reason we do is just like RoboCop, if they watch a depressing A story, which in RoboCop was this cop that lost his life and became a robot, right? And lost his family, his
Yeah.
house. So I think Paul Verhoeven was very smart in that he interspersed it with these very ridiculous commercials, and it made you laugh. It's like comic relief. So that's why Staycation is more of a comedy. It's like a satirical horror comedy, for that very reason. But the A story is of two girls, two college age girls named Britt and Marnie, and it's basically what they're going through, and we're kind of living through them, basically, how our experiences are their experiences. And the B story is a professor named Edward Bellows. He was kind of like the Dr. Fauci of the United States.
Okay.
And so basically he's trying to find a cure to this next virus, you know and as the story progresses, the A and B story somewhat interconnects with each other.
Okay, so basically, let's go back to the origin story of this film. So you were it's according to a blog interview, it's around April 2020. Obviously, we know what was going on then. You and your partner, I guess, Emile, decide to write make a film, I guess, right?
Mhm.
And that's the proof of concept of this
Yeah,
film.
it's called routine.
Yeah,
Um, we we did that when everything was shut down, and I
yeah,
mean everything.
sure, yeah, I
And
remember.
I'm
Yeah,
sure you understand
yeah,
what I'm talking about. I'm sure everybody in the world understands what I'm talking about.
yeah.
So I was stuck. We filmed in my condo, just him and I, and Emile Harris, God bless him, but he passed away unfortunately 2 years ago. So this film is kind of a tribute for
Yeah.
him because he's the writer, he's the editor, and he's the DP. He was. So basically, I had to complete it myself after he passed away. So hopefully he's looking down and hopefully he likes it. I did my best to complete it by myself.
Well, it must be amazed because you kept on going. That must have been very difficult to do that.
It was very difficult. Yeah, I mean that's a story in itself. And you know, you have to find a new editor. You have to get the master hard drives, which he had. And we filmed this in 6K resolution, which means it's a lot of data. And I mean like 220 terabyte hard drive.
Yeah.
That's how much data we had, 40 terabytes. So yeah, it was quite difficult. But my investors, and they understood that completing the film would be a little more difficult once he passed away. So originally we were supposed to finish in 2023, but that obviously was not going to happen, and we completed it a year later. So we were a year delayed for that reason.
Yeah.
But he and I, just Emile Haris, we started making films together back in 2002. That's how far back we go. He and I have worked on all my feature films. And Staycation is my sixth feature film.
Wow.
So it was a very long friendship and career relationship. So I miss him. I miss him a lot. And, he was the other half of, I guess my creative side, if you will.
Yeah.
We bounced ideas off of each other, and obviously I cannot do that now. But he and I, at the beginning of COVID, were thinking of trying to make something that could become a franchise, basically in the vein of like George Lucas.
Yeah.
That's how we were thinking. And we're thinking, what can we do? So, everything shut down. We cannot hire SAG actors. SAG-AFTRA shut down, right? So no SAG actors. You cannot film outside. So what do we do? I said, okay, we can film in my condo. That's legal.
Yeah.
And he was willing to come over. And an actress named Paige Laree Poucel plays Cassie in Routine, and she reprises her role in Staycation as a cameo. But she agreed to do it, and she was not part of the Screen Actors Guild. So again, it was legal, and she agreed to come
Yeah.
over, and we filmed her over one day in my condo. And since we couldn't film outside, we had a DC Marvel Comics artist named Dave Beaty, and he drew the third act of Routine. And
Wow.
it's her fighting these creatures,
Sure.
which you see in Staycation. Because of that, and it got into places like Film Quest or Coney Island, and it did pretty well. Because of that, I was able to approach people who might be interested in doing Staycation.
Yeah.
So basically, again, Harris and I, at the very beginning, we were thinking, what can we do? Franchise. So Routine was a proof of concept. It technically is like a midquel or a sequel, to Staycation. But we showed a Routine to various people, and they liked it. And I had the honor and privilege of being able to direct certain name actors, throughout my 20 years. A lot of Star Trek actors, especially like Robert Picardo or Marina Sirtis
Yep.
and Shimmerman. So, I've been very privileged and honored to be able to do that. So these investors knew that I had that resume and that relationship.
Yeah.
And I said, we can do something like that, get a name actors, hire them, and do a feature film version of Routine. And that's what ended up happening.
And then you were in post-production and then your partner passed away
Mhm.
and then you had to kind of like be in mourning, but then also attempt to finish the film as well, I guess, right? Like, and
Yeah.
then and then the way maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but also like doing things that he usually does, I guess, right? Or
Mhm.
finding
Mhm.
people to do
Yeah.
his kind of creative job, I guess, right?
Yeah. I meant he was starting the visual effects. So
Yeah,
I was doing everything audio. So I did like the ADR sessions.
yeah,
I actually did the ADR sessions for Staycation a month before he passed away. And coincidentally, it was also a month before the actor strike in the
yeah.
United States. So we got it done in the nick of time, basically. Otherwise these actors could not do it. So I was dealing with everything audio, and we had a contract, Harris and I. Basically, the contract is I do everything audio and I do the publicity, as the head producer, and he does everything visual. So he was working on the visual effects. So when he passed away, he was at like in the very beginning of the visual effects, and he had done some of it, but I had to find somebody else who could take over. And that person is a wonderful filmmaker named Brian Barsuglia. And without him, this film would not have been completed. So, I worked with Brian to complete this film. And I had to complete this film. We had no choice but to complete this film. The first step is once Harris passed away, I had to locate the hard drives. And we did not have access to his apartment because he passed away in his apartment.
Oh man.
So we didn't, for a month, it was in limbo, basically, because again, we couldn't legally enter his
And I
apartment.
guess the person who the whatever whoever the will or something, whoever was the person, like a family member or something like that, had to give you the hard drive, I'm assuming.
It was so he is from Singapore and he was the only one here. All of his family was in Singapore.
Okay.
And he was such a very private person that we had no contact information. None of us, as in his friends. He was so secretive when it came to his private life,
Okay.
that I basically put out posts on Instagram, and his cousin's wife happened to see it and contacted me saying, "Is this the same Emile Harris? That's my cousin. Did he pass away? What's going on?" And then because of that, that was 1 week after I posted, by the way. So he passed away like July 2nd of 2023. We found out he passed away 5 days later, and I was able to communicate with the cousin 1 week after that. So again, it was in limbo,
Yeah.
and again, the family members have to get permission.
Yeah.
So it took a good couple weeks.
Wow.
And it was very hard for me to talk to his parents because obviously, their son had passed away, right?
Yeah.
So it was not a pleasant conversation. That's not the way I wanted to meet his parents, if you will.
So you known him for, but you never met his parents. Gotcha.
No, no, no.
Okay. But at the same time, you're dealing with the mourning, but at the same time, you've put all this money and time and energy in, and you have investors, and you got to get this film done too, right? So that's a lot of stress and a lot of emotions going on, I guess, during that month.
I'm surprised my hair is not grayer than it is.
Yeah.
It was it was an intense time. But I also know that he put a lot of effort into making this film. And
You
the
wrote the
way we
script,
shot
right?
this film, we filmed Staycation during COVID, right?
Yeah.
So when we filmed, we had to film under the SAG-AFTRA, and it was very strict COVID guidelines, right? Um, and because of that, when we filmed the first part of it with actress Olivia Dabo of Star Wars and Star Trek, and Sean Kenny, who was the original crippled Captain Pike in the Star Trek
Yeah.
original series, um, 20% of that budget of just that section that we filmed
Yeah.
was COVID,
I
like
remember
COVID
Olivia Dabo
compliance.
from Wonder Years.
Wonder
That's my
Years, yes. She was
perspective.
the hippie sister in Wonder Years. And she
Yeah, yeah.
happened to be also acting with
That's my
Robert
reference
Redford.
point.
There you
Yeah.
go. But yeah, 20% of our budget went to COVID. It was very strict.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Everybody had a test. and they had to test negative. But that included one actor, Kyosuke Mukai, who came from Japan. They would not let him board the plane unless he tested negative, right?
Yeah.
Then he got on the plane from Japan to the United States. Once he landed, they would not let him onto the set until he tested negative.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you an example.
No, no,
Uh,
I know the stories of like, yeah, like the
yeah, I'm
whole
sure
experience.
other
Yeah.
filmmakers had this
Yeah.
nightmarish, yeah.
Yeah.
So also because of that, it ate into the budget. It used up our money for the first part. So Staycation, the first 15 minutes or so, that's the first part of the film that we filmed. With Olivia, with Sean Kenny, with two wonderful actors, Bailey Sorrell, Jill Streicher, who plays Matt and Kathy. So
Yeah.
we filmed those segments. And because we ran out of money due to COVID, we had to do an Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign. Luckily, we raised 200%. But that also meant we put in a lot of acting perks.
Yeah.
So God bless Harris. He had to write parts piecemeal for 2 years
Yeah.
and put together a coherent story to make
Gotcha.
Staycation what it is. So that's why uh, when the film was completed, I did my best to complete it, right? I personally had no idea what I had. I thought it worked, and it was definitely funny at certain points. But I had no idea how people would react to the film. It's been a couple years since COVID, right?
Yeah.
And again, this was filmed for 2 years, and he was writing the story. And then
Yeah.
the Britt and Marnie sequence, the Britt and Marnie, they're the main, I guess, the A
Yeah.
actors. That section was filmed almost last. So, we filmed that because we had filmed everything else and there was no cohesive glue. And that was why we filmed the Britt and Marnie sequence for 9 straight shoot days. And
Okay.
that tied everything together. It tied the Professor Bello stuff, it tied the clown vitamins, it tied, the zombie zingers, everything. It
Yeah.
just all tied it all together. Um, and again, God bless Harris because he was a really phenomenal writer. But he was the one who wrote this. He's the
Yeah.
one who thought outside the box and put it
Yeah.
together. So when we started getting reviews for the film, and we had to get reviews because that's what the distributor was asking for, right? I was holding my breath. I did not know what I had. I had no idea, I did a film called Occupants.
Yeah.
This one, we filmed that 9 straight shoot days, and we had a plan from the very beginning. I had a wonderful script by a wonderful writer named Julia Camera.
Yeah.
And that film, I knew what we had once we completed it, right? And it did a lot for my career. With Staycation, because it was filmed piecemeal, you know, once the reviews came in and we started winning, like at Your Wonderful Festival and other places, we won Best Ensemble at Santa Fe, we won Best Comedy at Shockfest, then I knew we had something, right?
Yeah.
But I'm very critical of every film I do. And I'm sure other filmmakers have the same, I guess, mindset, but I cannot watch my own film once it's done. It's very
Yeah.
difficult for me because I only see flaws and, I'm very critical. And maybe if I had the money that George Lucas had, I would keep fixing it over and over like he did with the Star Wars films, but I do
Yeah. But
not.
remember the first time he had no budget, right? Like, or
He
very
did.
small
Yeah. He
budget.
had no budget. He had no budget.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, I wish I could do the job of the puppet, but
But
he
at the same
couldn't do the
time,
job.
they had to figure it out. That's what made it great. They had to figure out like in
I know.
post-production, right?
I totally agree with you. I
Yeah.
totally agree with you. Trust me. I'm a very big fan of The Empire Strikes Back. That's like one of my favorite films of all time.
Yeah.
So, and when he did the first one, Star Wars, it wasn't even called A New Hope, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was like over budget. He was depressed when I heard he did not even attend his own premiere
Yeah.
because he thought he had a bomb. But what did he know? So again, I'm not comparing Staycation to Star Wars. There is no comparison. Star Wars is the superior film.
Sure.
But until the reviews came in and, we started winning
Yeah.
awards at festivals, I really didn't know because again, it was kind of like cobbled together for 2 years. I've never done a film like this before. It was 30 shoot days filmed over 2 years. Every film, every feature I've done, we just shot back to back for, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, right? Or 9 days, but never, okay, we'll shoot, I don't know, 6 months later and have to match continuity and, other nightmare scenarios like that. I've never had that. But this was the COVID era.
Yeah.
And Harris and I, we took it as I guess, a challenge to try to do this, And I think that's why he kept writing. And I was very hard on him, unfortunately, But, as the creative, as his creative partner, I said, we got to write this. We raised the money, we got these Indiegogo perks, and we have no choice, Harris, you know. And God bless him, he wrote it. And then it was my job to direct and hopefully pull the performance from some actors who were not actors, which is kind of difficult. But, I'm very much a stickler for performance. So, I was, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what's your origin story with Emile Harris? Where did you guys meet?
We met in 2002 at UCLA extension courses.
You went to USC, right? You
I
graduated from
did.
USC?
And then
Okay.
after I graduated, I went to my rival school.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
UCLA.
they
No, it
don't
was just,
mix.
it's called extension courses.
Yeah.
So basically, you don't have to, get a degree or anything. You just
Sure.
take
Yeah.
specific. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
No, it's just that they don't mix the USC, they're rivals, right?
No,
So
but I love both schools. Don't get me wrong. I
yeah.
mean, the only rivalry for me is football. That's it.
Wait, so you are you from
Anything about
USC
American
for
college
football?
football, yeah,
Yeah.
the UCLA and USC are like mortal enemies.
Yeah, but it's really not a fair fight these days, right? USC's won the
No,
last 20
no, it
years.
isn't. When I went to school, though, we were really good. But yeah, UCLA is much better now.
Yeah. No, but I mean, yeah, yeah. So basically, yeah, but because yeah, you were I guess you came after the with the Pete Carroll years, right?
I
So
was during the Pete Carroll years.
okay.
That's why that's my school. We had a three-peat and everything. Oh my God, we were doing so well
Th-
back in the
Yeah.
2000s. But no, it's over.
Reggie Bush and
Yeah.
Ryan, who was your lefty quarterback?
Oh, I forgot.
Oh my God, what's his name? I mean, now it's
Was it
gonna bother me.
Lionheart? I don't know. I
What's that?
forgot.
Matt Liner, right?
It was him, right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
There you
yeah,
go. I sort of remember.
yeah, yeah.
No, those were the days, but now it's 2025, not 2005. So anyway.
Okay, okay, so go ahead. So basically you guys met at
Yeah,
you
we
guys
met.
in this
I was
class.
taking, so after I graduated from USC in 2000, I went to take specific courses. So I was in like the critical studies program. So it was more like, film analysis.
Yeah,
There wasn't a lot of hands-on experience, with cameras and whatnot. So I took cinematography courses at UCLA Extension. dur- you know, basically, more like hands-on experience courses. And I met him at I guess the cinematography class.
okay.
And we said, hell, I'm sorry, heck,
Yeah.
let's, do something together. We're, aspiring filmmakers. So let's make a film together. So that's what we did. And we made a film called Girl with Gun. And that film just, we were at Comic-Con, it got it got the attention of my soon-to-be producer, Howard Nash. And Howard and I did the first 5 feature films, including Occupants,
Yeah.
together. And I was able to work with actors like the late John Hurd, the Home Alone dad, Robert Picardo, the doctor from Voyager. I worked with him 6 times because of Howard. It was just, but it's because of Girl with Gun. It started with Girl with Gun, you know. And just FYI, in Staycation, we actually had the same actor from Girl with Gun named Eric Holloway, and he plays the same character.
Yeah.
And when he mentions that he met a girl in LA, you know, just, basically he was reminiscing about Girl with Gun. And
Yeah.
I had the theme from Girl with Gun play in Staycation for that,
Gotcha.
as a little trivia, a little tidbit. I like, as a filmmaker, to also have fun, right? You should have fun making films, right? I have to admit, Staycation wasn't as much fun once Harris passed away, but I still like to put in these little homages, if you will. So I did with Girl with Gun, definitely with Routine. I mentioned how we were, had certain actors reprise their roles.
Mhm.
Well, Paige Laree Poucel, Bill Victor Arucan, who's my head executive producer, he played Rob Peterson in Routine, and he reprised his role in Staycation. And the Peterson name is in basically every single one of my films since Girl with Gun.
And
So it's kind of like it's an in joke.
what's the joke? What's the Peterson joke?
In Girl with Gun, the Eric Holloway character mentioned how his coworker Peterson said this and Peterson said that.
Yeah.
And I'm going, that's just a funny name. I didn't come up with it. It was Harris. He wrote it, right? So he came up with it. I'm going, you know what? It's fun. Let's just keep using it. So John Hurd in PJ, my first feature, mentions get Dr. Peterson. And then again, just in Occupants, Robert Picardo's character is Dr. Alan Peterson. So the Peterson, it's a gag, in every film.
Yeah.
Now, uh, the Peterson in Staycation, though, I'm going to say is the same Peterson in Girl with Gun because I tied Girl with Gun into the universe of Staycation.
Gotcha. So yeah, so Robert Picardo was
Mhm.
also in the Wonder Years too, right? Just like your star Olivia Dabo.
Yeah. Yeah,
He was the coach.
he wasn't in Staycation, but he was
No, no, no. I know, but you just mentioned you worked with him 6 times, right?
yeah.
So yeah,
So
yeah.
PJ, my first feature, Chasing the Green, my second feature, Legends of Nathaya, my third feature, Occupants, my fourth feature. Um, he narrated my documentary Restoration of Paradise, and then he was one of the actors in my action short called The Assassin's Apprentice,
Hmm.
which we happen to also do a sequel. And that was with my producer, Paul Hickman. So, yeah, those were the 6 times that I worked with Bob Picardo. Really wonderful actor, very smart guy. And I'm really looking forward to that new Starfleet Academy show
Okay.
that's supposed to be coming out next year. I think they filmed in Toronto. Did they film in Toronto or they
Maybe,
filmed
yeah.
somewhere or Vancouver? I don't know, but they definitely filmed in Canada.
Somewhere in Canada, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So
but
I'm very much
you're
looking
still
forward to
based
that.
in Los Angeles, right?
Hmm?
You're still based in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I'm in Orange County,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like the next county down.
Yeah.
I'm in Huntington Beach, California.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
I
So
guess, yeah, I say it's LA, but it technically isn't.
you finished the film and then like so you had no idea, then you started getting into festivals, started getting awards, you got a distribution now. So obviously it's a tribute to your friend and like it's there,
Oh
the
yeah.
movie's there forever, right? So
Mhm.
his legacy's there, right? So that's an amazing feeling. It seems like it's almost a movie in itself about how you got the hard drive and all that. That
Yes.
seems to be you could make a movie about that, right?
I
So
know. I know.
which is
I definitely could make a movie about that if I wanted to. However, though, what I really want to do, I was mentioning how we wanted to franchise, right?
yeah, so that's the what I was asking, what's next? But go ahead. Yeah.
So obviously my writer friend Emile Harris is no longer with us, so I had to
Yeah.
get a new writer. Um, I happened to write a 93-page script by myself, based on his initial notes for Staycation 2, Harris, right?
Yeah.
And I was able to put it together, a 93-page script. But I'm not a writer. I don't, I'm just not a writer, just like I'm not an actor. I'm a producer, I'm a director, I may be good with publicity, but I'm definitely not a writer. But, I did write it. So what I did was I knew it had to be better than what I wrote. So I hired a really wonderful filmmaker writer named Avishai Weinberger, based out of New York. And I had met him 10 years prior at Shriek Fest, where we won the best sci-fi feature for this film.
Yeah.
And I had I read a script that he did, a feature script that took place on a space station. And I forgot the name of the script, but I remember when I read it, I said, "This is fantastic." I said, "If I'm ever going to work with another writer, it's going to be this guy." So about 2 months ago, I approached him. I said, "Would you be interested in revamping what I wrote? My 93 page,
Mhm.
very mediocre script, And he read it, and I sent him a link to Staycation, the first film. And, we were able to work out a deal because he said yes. He could have said no. I'm glad he said yes because he's just a phenomenal writer. So he's been working on this for 2 months, and he's supposed to turn in a draft in July. And I really look forward to it because, I just know some people just have it when it comes to writing, and he's one of those people. So I
Mhm.
told him I'm going to give you a lot of creative leeway. So the way I look at Staycation 2 is like 10 Cloverfield Lane is to the first Cloverfield.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It,
Yeah.
it is a sequel, but it isn't.
Yeah.
So I said, just look at it that way. I said there are certain actors that I want to reprise their role. So I told him what the test, the litmus test is,
Yeah.
like Olivia, she wants to come back. So I said, get her character back, get Sean Kenny's character back,
Mhm.
So basically I gave him kind of a list of, this is what I need to happen. And besides that, I said, here are actors that don't need to come back. If you can, I told them, I don't want you to shoehorn people in, otherwise it'll feel like, it doesn't fit, we're trying to force it in, right? I said, don't
Yeah.
do that. I want you to just go with, your gut instinct. And, if it looks nothing like my 93-page script, then so be it. So that's where we are right now.
Gotcha. Well, it seems like you're really on your way because it's like now you're gonna get distributed. That must be a great feeling getting distribution for it.
It's a relief
Yeah,
because
gotcha.
I had no idea what I had on my
Yeah,
hands. And I feel like oh gosh, what is it? Atlas, is that the guy that was holding up the globe, and he had all this pressure because I'm not I can't just create an artistic film. I have to create a film that could sell, right? Because
yeah.
I'm answerable to my investors. So I just when we got a very good distribution deal, which we did with this company called Twin Engines, that's our distributor, Twin
Yeah.
Engine. Um, I breathed a sigh of relief. I was just relieved that we got a good deal. We actually got like four offers, so it wasn't the only one. But I hired a wonderful publicist named Sebastian of Savant Artists to scour his contacts. And he was able to, he's worked with these people before. So yeah. No, my investors were happy when they found out we got this deal. And I was just relieved.
Yeah.
And right now I'm just trying to provide all the material that they're asking for. A dialogue list, closed captioning files,
Yeah.
just everything that they need to sell it worldwide, not just domestic, which is USA and Canada, but international.
So, so the film is very like because I was talking to somebody about this even last year, whereas we're not seeing any COVID stories, right? Because we're kind of have COVID burnout, right? And I mean, people don't really want to talk about it. I don't know if you noticed that either, right? And then like it's kind of like a war in a sense where like 5 years from now, there's going to be tons of movies about it and books about it and like how it affected us emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, whatever, right? And it's sort of like in the late 70s, all the Vietnam movies started coming out, right? Like 10 years
Mhm.
after the war ended, but nobody talked about it for 10 years. But you're onto something with this film because it's like it has social commentary about what people were feeling then, right? Like obviously you
Mhm.
got the Zoom calls in the film, the
Like we're
awkward,
doing here.
yeah, exactly. The online dating, right? That which people were having, political divides, which is keeps going, right? The
That's
growing,
forever.
but it's like, but think about podcasts and live streams, right? How influential was it? Like it was just like it made the election, the last election, right? Like, so you're doing this before, you're kind of ahead of your time, right? In terms of like, but you're almost like one of the first films to kind of like do it in a kind of comedic way.
Yes, yes, that's what one reviewer said, by the way.
Yeah.
And that really pleasantly surprised me when somebody, a reviewer who liked the film,
Yeah.
said this is the first COVID film that he saw that was a comedic take on
Yeah.
it. Not depressing and
Well,
everybody's
that's
getting
the
off.
so basically, yeah. So tone is the important.
Yeah,
It's a horror film, horror comedy, which is a great genre, right? So,
I agree.
and it sells, right? As you said. And but it's basically, but it's like, but so it doesn't take itself too seriously, but there's still great social commentaries that are happening. So,
Yeah,
congrats.
I mentioned crazy clown vitamins, right?
Yeah.
I meant everybody, the vitamin craze, vitamin C,
Yeah,
vitamin
vitamin,
Z.
yeah, the vitamins, yeah, yeah,
And again, I can't be a hypocrite because I still take vitamin C and I still take vitamin zinc.
yeah. Conspiracies, right? So yeah. So you got to make the sequel.
I would very much like to, and it seems so with my investors. So again, that's the reason why, though. I want to do a film with a script that's a diamond, not coal. And I just worry that if we had made my 93-page script,
Yeah.
it would start off with the spine of the film is just mediocre. And that's what I was worried about. I'm a perfectionist. I'm an artist. And I want to start with a fabulous script, a fantastic masterpiece. And I think this guy, Avishai Weinberger, he can write that script. And that's why I'm not making Staycation 2 yet until I have his script in July.
Well, congratulations on the success. You got all the trophies. We're proud to show your film, and we need to get, I guess we got to wait for your next the sequel to come out, and we'll talk again then.
Well, thank you so
And I'll,
much for
yeah,
having
thank you.
our film and awarding it for the best feature
And
film.
you're very good. You're a very good marketer. I see you, like I said, I see you on Instagram. You're always popping up on my Instagram feeds in a good way. It's like you got a
Okay.
trophy. You're not pretentious about it. You're just like you're just
I always, it takes everybody to make this, films
yeah.
happen. It's
That's what
not
it.
just
Yeah,
me. I had Harris, I had Bill Victor, I had my friend Janine, and you name it.
it
I
takes a
have
village,
you.
right? Yeah,
We all work together. We have to all work together.
yeah.
Otherwise, we're never going to have anything, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
But that's what I mean. Like you're not you're just you're ha you your Instagram posts are about happiness.
I want happiness. Yeah,
Yeah.
for the most part.
That's the vibe that I get. It's like, oh, he's back again. Look at him. Yeah.
Most 95% of my posts are happiness.
Yeah,
Yes.
I see that. And it's like we need more of
95%, which
that.
means 5% I may break that mold.
No, no,
But
of course. But I'm saying we need more of that. It's just like, come on. Like, you know what I mean? Like people like are yeah, they're you know
I
how it is. Yeah.
yeah, I promised my investors we'd get into festivals, we'd win.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to give them,
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
some of them like that, and I feel like I need to keep giving them wins,
Yeah.
and that's what I post a lot. I,
Or
I'm trying my best. I
well,
really, really.
email me when your trophy comes in, and
Oh,
we'll
definitely.
talk.
I'm waiting. Trust me, I'm waiting for it. I'm
Yeah,
waiting with bated breath.
cool. All right, man.
Thank you so much, though. Thank you for everything.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for this interview, and just thank you.
And yeah, listen, man, it's what you went through is it's an amazing story. So hopefully you're proud of yourself. So
I just hope Harris is happy
yeah,
looking down from where he is.
I'm sure he is. All right, let's talk again when you make the sequel.
Thank you so much.